Okay, here we go. So this is the second video in I hadn't planned on being a 3-video little mini series about Michael Hauge and plotting your story. But I don't want this long 45-minute to an hour video, so we'll break it up into 3. So hopefully it's a little more manageable, a little more enjoyable for you. We went over Act 1, which is the first 25% of the book. One of the pointers that I made in the last video was you really need to make sure you write these down. Again, if you're like me, you're busy, you're gonna forget. Okay, so write these down. I always write these down, and I always reference throughout my writing process, because I know that I'm gonna get off. I know that I'm gonna go off on tangents. If you're a writer, you're a creative person, and we can, people call it word vomiting, right? We can just start writing and we just get off, okay? So this video I'm going to talk about Act 2, which is going to be the vast majority, the bulk of your book, 50% of your book. And so this is the 25% to 75% point. We just talked about the 25%, that turning point number 2, which is a change in plans. And this is where our main character is changing physically, but also most importantly, emotionally and psychologically. Okay. So now, we go from 25 to 50%. This is the portion of our book. And this is the stage that Michael Hauge calls progress, okay? And the main character is in this, and of course, whatever the story is, we're still on the journey, fantasy sci-fi, we're on the journey right in the Hobbit. Bilbo and company, they leave, right? They leave Rivendell. Bilbo is emboldened a little bit, kind of excited, but also anxious, and pushes back on this new identity again that make that character believable by responding that way. That's how most of us would respond. But you know, they're starting to grow into their new person, and they're trying to respond to things in new ways. And so your character, and one of the things that I hope you understand about this plotting system is it's really not about your story, the physical story. I mean, that's an important part of it, but this is really about the character story. This is really about the character's internal development and change. And if you've read a good book, and maybe the setting was kind of poor, or even the adventure. I mean, I know all kinds of people have written all kinds of funny, they've posted funny videos about how Lord of the Rings could have been literally like 50 pages long. But we all still read it because, again, Tolkien, and not to harp on Tolkien, but he does such a good job of this emotional, psychological, and physical journey that each character takes. And that's really what it's about. It's not about the physical adventure, right? It's about how do the characters change in all of these different ways, and how do we feel about that? How would we respond to that? And then, of course, if you're like me, when you're reading, you kind of put yourself in that main character's shoes, and would you have responded the same way? So in this next 25% of the story, whatever the story is, whatever the adventure is, or the mission, or the voyage, or the search for new love, whatever it is, your character is now trying to respond in this new way, this new understanding that they have of themselves. That brings us to 50% of the book. This is turning point number 3, and this is called, Michael Hauge calls this the point of no return. I like that term, and I also using the phrase, this is the point where the main character or main characters, their backs get put against the wall. And what Michael Hauge means by the point of no return, this is the point in the story where the character cannot go back to his or her old life. And when I say that, I mean both literally and figuratively. Or probably a better way to put it is physically and emotionally / psychologically. The character will never be the same at this point. We know that the character has now made a full change, and the character must keep moving forward they just can't go back. Mystery novel, police detective novel. The main characters uncovered something that they have to keep moving forward. They cannot live with this secret, or maybe they've uncovered a crime syndicate that, you know, the simple knowledge of this is going to mean their life. You know, in a romance novel, the main character has uncovered information about an old lover, or about their own family, or about a new love interest that will forever change them. They can never go back. If we're taking a look at The Hobbit, this is really the moment when the party, Bilbo's party, enters the Misty Mountains, and they get captured by the goblins and the Goblin King, and then they have to escape, and he finds the ring. And that moment where he meets Gollum and finds the ring, that is the point of no return, in my opinion, in that book. Bilbo Baggins will never ever be the same. He quite literally cannot go back to Hobbiton at that moment. He's stopped by the barrier of these huge mountains that they can't get over, they can't go under, they certainly can't go back the way they came, but he's also emotionally, psychologically changed forever. This has to be a big moment in the book. It can't be subtle, and you really need to make your readers feel that kind of, I believe you need to make your readers feel that anxiety that any human being would feel when they realize that they will never be the same. You know, for a lot of people, this is, you know, I mean, think about that moment when you graduated high school or college. You're not a kid anymore, right? You realize that your childhood is over, and it's like exciting and new and happy, but also really sad and anxious. Or that moment when you get married, or you start a new job, or you have kids, or you move. You know, I mean, we have to somehow get those emotions into our character as they realize this moment, this point of no return. So this is turning point number 3. It really, really does need to be halfway through the book. And I'll tell you why. If it's too early, it's unbelievable, right? If it's too early, again, we all have a different human experience, but we need that character to develop. We need that character to actually understand and believe that this is the point of no return. They realize it. If we haven't developed the character, if the audience doesn't have any buy-in to the character, that's a hard thing to do. And so when we have this moment in the book that's kind of gut-wrenching, but exciting, but anxious, you know, if we don't know the character as a reader, if we're not bought into them, you know, it seems very disingenuous. If it's too late in the book, you know, it becomes kind of like, well, I always have this attitude, like, what are we doing? You know, if it's 75%, 90% of the book, and all of a sudden the character knows they can never go back to their life, I mean, why have you gotten all this way and not realized that you're changed and you can't go back to the way you are? And so, I mean, and I know this is not the most eloquent way to put it, but I just think, well, your character's stupid. And I know that's really blunt and not very nice, but that's kind of how I feel. And there's been books that I've read where you get these characters, you know, like maybe the main character is going to be the savior of the world and blah, blah, blah. And that's awesome. And you can write a great story where you have this hero character. But they constantly question whether or not they're actually the savior of the world. And I think any hero-like character is always going to have those thoughts, like, is this really me? Am I really the one who's supposed to be doing this? Or am I really screwing this up? But, you know, I mean, 50% of the way through the book, the main character, the hero, should kind of realize that, yeah, this is on me, right? This is my fate, my destiny, my mission, whatever. And so when the author continues to push this idea that, man, they really don't know, they're struggling with it, I kind of find that unbelievable. You know, it's kind of like the star football player that keeps telling people, nah, I'm not the star football player. Look, bro, you've got, you know, 150 tackles on the season, and you've got, you know, 1,000 rushing yards, and I know that's astronomical, but at that point, you better believe that you are the star of the football team. You know what I mean? So that's kind of why it has to be at 50%. Okay, and it needs to be. Again, think of the Misty Mountains and the Hobbit. If you're a fantasy buff, it's a pretty big moment, especially when he finds what we eventually find out to be the One Ring. Okay, then we go from 50 to 75%, and because we've developed this moment that is a back against the wall, point of no return. The stakes get higher, right? And again, going to the Hobbit, thinking about the Hobbit, thinking about that journey, the stakes definitely get higher, right? They're now being chased by orcs. They get saved by giant eagles. There's all kinds of they're getting ready to run into Mirkwood Forest. The plot thickens. Things become more dangerous. They become more violent. And part of that, I think what you really need to, what you really need to instill in the audience with your character at this point is, it's not that the stakes have never been that high before in terms of the consequences of this journey or mission, but it's now the character realizes the stakes are that high. The character realizes that failure means the end of the world, or failure means an innocent man goes to jail, or failure means you're never gonna find love again. Failure means that the Galactic Empire is gonna win. And so this is the section 25% of the book where I think there needs to be a lot of action. There needs to be a lot of psychological intrigue in this portion of the book. If you're an author that does some internal dialogue, some thinking, I always italicize my thinking in my books, but this is a point where I think there needs to be a lot of internal dialogue. Again, the main character has now become who he or she is going to become, and they've realized that this is serious. We need to take this seriously, and failure could be really bad. Finally, we come to turning point number 4, and turning point number 4 is a major setback, is the way that Michael Hauge puts it. Now look, we all know that 99% of books we read, the main character, or most of the main characters, are going to win. But this moment in the book needs to be a moment where it really feels like the main character is going to lose. My wife tells me I'm sick and twisted. In fantasy, one of the things that I like to do at this point is kill someone that everyone likes, okay? And I know it can be heartbreaking, and we get attached to characters, and my wife tells me that I'm not a good person because of that. Obviously, she's joking, but we need to do something that makes and again, needs to be both physical and psychological. This major setback, from a physical standpoint, this could be a major roadblock in front of your main character, and the main character has no idea how they're going to get around it. Right? They're again, in the Hobbit, I think for me, this is really that Mirkwood Forest scene, and Bilbo really has no idea how he's going to get the dwarves out of this situation. It's just like one thing after another. They keep screwing up. They get caught by the spiders. They get caught by the wood elves. They get, it's compounding issues. But I think the more important major setback here needs to be the psychological setback of your main character. Your main character has recognized at this point that they are a new person, and they are forever going to be changed. And now this is kind of like that buyer's remorse point. Now they need to second guess that. Now they really need to consider, do I like who I'm becoming? And I think that's more important than the physical. Does it look like our main character is going to die? I mean, that's great. You can definitely do that. Or like me, am I going to kill off another main character that my main character was really attached to, and that's hard to deal with. But the real big one here is the psychological part of that, and that is, do I like who I've become? And maybe I want to try to go back to the way I was before, even though I really deep down know inside that I can't.